What are the different strands that come together to make hip-hop culture?
Well, one of the things that really attracted me to hip-hop in the beginning was how really fundamentally basic the foundations of hip-hop were. And by basic, I mean it's the basic foundations of what one learns in school in terms of education. It's the elements is what they call it. And so graffiti writing, which they refer to as writing, was one element. Another element was DJing and what is now producing is also called turntablism. Another one was lyricism, and that was the MC. And then there was dance, and dance was defined as to b-boy, b-girl, because the dancing occurred on the break beats, and so there were break dancers. And the other element that developed that was very much a part of hip-hop culture was what they called knowledge. And knowledge was this whole theory around how do you talk about what's really going on? How real can you be? And this constant push to deal with reality and representation of reality as part of what made you very much a part of hip-hop culture.
But knowledge presumably runs through the other major elements as well, right?
Yes, so exactly. Because hip-hop culture is a youth culture for the most part, there's a tremendous amount of critique, and so it has to be witnessed. And those who are witnessing it are contributing, they're collaborators as well in terms of what's happening. So you really do have to be able to represent with the knowledge that comes to all that. So you don't want to appear to be naive, inaccurate. So what happens in terms of hip-hop culture is that the artist, him or herself, has to really work to look at the history of their community, their school, their larger city, the world, whatever it is they're going to talk about, so that they actually not only represent these communities in an accurate way, but they do it in an amazingly creative way. There were all these expressions, especially in the beginning. One was come correct. You have to come correct. Okay, you have to represent. You have to represent where you're from. You have to represent who you are. You can't go through this sort of sense of I don't know, I'm a stranger in a strange land. That's not hip hop. Yeah, it's like I'm sorry. Commit to your place. Make a decision. You know, because you cannot actually stand here and expect me to listen to you if you don't know who you are.
Where does it start? I know this is a thorny issue in hip-hop scholarship, but what are the origins?
Well, no, there's no question it started in the New York area. Most people say it started in the Bronx. Really, it's a party that people are having, and there's certain expectations of that party. And in the New York City area, you have all sorts of immigrants from different places throughout the world. And that combination, and you have a thriving African-American community that comes from the U.S., all of that comes together so that as you're walking through neighborhoods or walking around, you're also hearing things.
But it's the diversity of cities that can be so special in terms of encouraging innovation, right?
Exactly, exactly. So all of that, I mean, I remember as a kid in Chicago always knowing what was going on in different apartments by what people were playing. You know, if all day long they were playing the blues and it was the sad blues, I suppose.
Something was wrong there, right?
Something wrong there. It's like, uh-oh, you know. So you would expect a certain kind of rhythm coming out of New York versus a place like Los Angeles that has a car culture that's a different kind of place. So all of that makes a big difference in terms of how the hip-hop scene actually starts.
There's this particular innovation, right, of combining someone talking with someone working the turntable at the same time. When do we think that starts?
Well, everything starts with the turntable, so the DJ, because it starts as party culture, right? It's all about the party, and the DJ, as the music is going, was the one who would say, you know, put your hands in the air. You know, everybody say, yeah. But if you've got two turntables going and you're trying to listen, and at that time, you actually have to use your hands for everything you're doing. You can't work the crowd and get them going with what you're doing. You needed someone else to do it. And that's how the MC comes in.
in some sense, it's a classic story about urban specialization, of having enough people who are willing to pay for two people, or who are willing to put up with two people doing this rather than just one person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so the beginning of the person speaking is they're just doing what the DJ was doing before. And you're really pumping up the crowd for that DJ. But then at a certain point, the MC really begins to emerge. And the MC begins to say things that's associated with the beat. Now, at the same time, the DJ is also beginning to introduce the break beats. So you start having the B-boy and B-girls doing that. So you have another language associated with how one assesses that and how one understands it. Because remember, critique is there. So there's this notion of meritocracy, level playing field, but it isn't a sweet, ideal, kind thing. What's at stake?
Cities aren't often that kind.
Right. There's a lot at stake. There's too much at stake, and what's at stake is that you're representing home.